Good evening, wrestling community. Well, technically Tuesday morning, a little after 1. And welcome to another edition of Wrestle Talk Show. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman. Less than 24, well, about 24 hours from WrestleMania. And we'll discuss a little bit of that along with my thoughts on that. And that and much more. But first and foremost, like we always do, I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, and we want to thank our audience. We want to thank the viewership on the last video. Uh, Within 2 days, you guys are creating incredible viewership numbers. The demographics are looking better and better each day. Obviously, as I've said before, the male demographic weighs in a little more than the female demographic, but since it's on a daily basis that it generates, it fluctuates. So thank you to the wrestling men and women wrestling fans. So let's get started like we always do with your ratings for last week into this week. Obviously, since Raw just went off the air a little bit ago, ratings probably won't generate till later this morning or first thing tomorrow, and we'll have a video for that after 6 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, hopefully. Friday Night SmackDown of last week, what they dubbed the recap show, basically, like I was talking about in the last video, placeholders, scored a 1.94 with 30 million viewers watching it. Nice number, but like we always say when we see this number, it's damn near close. I mean, give or take, from the source I got it from, which is a legitimate source, 1.94 is flirting with 2.0, so I'm not too worried about that. Although, like they said in the beginning, the mission with sci-fi was to maintain or go beyond a 2.0. But 1.94 after a 2.0 last week, not so bad. TNA Impact scored a 1.2 with an average audience of 1.7 million viewers. And as usual, I was guessing, well, not guessing, but at this point, you can almost assume it. WWE Superstars, where it is airing, scored a 0.6. Between a 0.5 and a 0.6 is its norm. It hasn't broken that mold, and with less and less people carrying it, I think it's safe to assume that it won't break that mold, considering how it started, where Chris Jericho was the champion of that show and it showcased wrestlers like The Undertaker. I think that, I mean, WWE has developmental, but I joke and I call it the developmental show, or the show for the wrestlers that WWE wants to keep but doesn't think that they're national TV worthy. So, with getting a 0.6 isn't helping. One, it's not helping ratings in the contract that it still has in other areas. And two, it doesn't look good on the wrestler. You could be the best wrestler, because it could be argued either it's not covered in enough place, it's not shown in enough places, like we said before, WGN dropped it. Comcast providers, at least on my end, whatever your cable provider, most people didn't get it. And around here, it's Comcast cable, and it was not available. It was advertised on every other WWE program like you had a choice, but you couldn't see it. So who's to say I might have a different take on it? I have seen one or two shows, and like I said, it was after they kind of wanted to make it another superstar show where it was filled with superstars again, where Chris Jericho was your champion and people like The Undertaker were working on it and whatnot. It doesn't do much. It's like being, it's like going from national TV to a web-based program. Even though a lot of people are watching things on the internet, it doesn't do well in comparison. Like last week, we compared it, or one of the ratings to, uh, it was Raw. Raw got the 2 week prior to Raw, it got a 3.3 when the debut of Dancing with the Stars, starring Chris Jericho and many other sports legends and celebrities, got a 5.0 rating. And the rumor was that people seen that it was the same Raw placeholder till Mania and switched the channel is the assumption. But no disrespect to Dancing with the Stars. It's never been a show I've been into. So I, for one, if I didn't like Raw, wouldn't switch to Dancing with the Stars. There's plenty of other shows to watch. Moving on to your news, bits, and lies, we'll call it. We want to make a correction from the last show. Special thanks to ShareFan2000, who's also a fellow wrestling reviewer on YouTube. Look her up on YouTube. Again, Share, as in the singer, fan, one word, 2000, the number, and check out her material. She does a lot. She covers a lot. Real insightful. But in regards to the show correction that she called me out on, apparently with the Hogan divorce, there was also a little bit of adultery. And I actually should have said, because I referenced the Hulk Hogan documentary on A&E, it's only one side of the story. And the way what I always say is there's three sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth. So I guess it was unfair to come out like that and speculate things, but if you not to downplay the correction, but if you noticed, I segued into, it wasn't just about that. It was basically a rant on divorces, even though they aren't. Divorces should be amicable and reasonable. But there's a lot on the plate too. I mean, infidelity, Hogan's son in that car accident, paralyzing, I believe paralyzing and or killing his friend who was in the passenger seat. So for that incorrect information, we apologize. WrestleMania, which I found as soon as it happened, I found it kind of funny because last week we reported that Jim Ross would not be hosting, commentating WrestleMania, and he found it, quote, funny that the wrestling rumor sites knew his schedule before he did. This was obviously another apparent swerve for the fact that he did come out and he did commentate. HBK was also there to follow up the Taker Triple H match that was soon to come. Again, I'll reiterate that I think that they could have brought him in a month sooner and cut some decent promos between him, Triple H, and Undertaker, but I've emphasized build enough. I myself think that to take a month to tell a story is exactly how it should be and exactly how it was. Because if you remember back in the day when pay-per-views were the big deal and everybody and their mom was ordering the pay-per-view, it may not have been the entire reason, but you wanted to, because for the last 3.5 weeks they had been building up that whatever feud or storyline would come to a resolution at the pay-per-view. And the storylines were so well driven that you followed it from beginning, middle, and at the end. You couldn't wait to see the outcome because you had followed it that far. Anymore, I hear people who I call social wrestling fans, whereas they catch a little bit, you know, and if they get a pay per view, they get a pay per view. If they miss a pay per view, they miss a pay per view. Or what I meant to say is they watch it for a little bit, pick it up, and you can't really disagree lately that, and I always hated this term for it, the male soap opera. But in a sense, it is true lately that you can miss a couple weeks, and outside of some minor details from the televised show, you can figure out exactly what point you're at and more or less what you missed in the time you decided not to watch. Ah, moving on, a new reality show is in the works, as if we didn't have enough of those. Uh, you remember last episode, I kind of ranted on that a bit, but not in this context. Um, a show called, a reality show entitled Wrestling Wives is in the works of being made, and it will feature Booker T's wife along with two other former WWE divas. So that'll be interesting on a wrestling level. But other than that, it's just another reality show. But hopefully it'll offer something different. I doubt it because it's not. You'll see, on the road following their husbands and whatnot, but it'll just be another reality show, and this time you're using the heading of wrestling. So we'll see what happens there. Um, Next, The Rock announces, which again has already happened, and we'll review that tomorrow. The Rock announced at WrestleMania that there would be a huge announcement for the Raw following WrestleMania, Monday night tonight. And in ROH news, ROH has its final show tonight, I believe. Its final show using HDNet as its provider, featuring a 6-man tag, airs at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and will compete with the time slot. Will compete with the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. For all you ROH fans, this final broadcast was recorded in January, and this will conclude, as we said a couple videos ago, formally conclude the relationship between ROH and HDNet programming. In other news, we reported last video that Kurt Angle was arrested for DUI after being found on a median on a highway in North Dakota. Failed a field sobriety test, and then came out and said, "I, excuse me, I haven't determined whether or not he was trying to get out of the DUI, but like we said last video, the cops could smell it. That was the whole reason of the field sobriety test. He admitted to being texting while on the median, so I don't know if he was trying to use that as to get away from the fact that, no, I'm not drunk, I was just text messaging or what have you. But he speaks out again. TNA's Kurt Angle has voiced his opinion, voiced his outrage with WWE wrestlers, quote, using his moves at WrestleMania. And I won't lie, there's some things that look like an angle slam, some things that don't. But come on, Kurt. Really? We bag on TNA back and forth, but he's actually one of the better ones on TNA. And with the money he's making and money he's made, you'd think this would be the least of his worries. But apparently, Randy Orton has responded, and we'll have that response tomorrow, along with all your Raw news and anything else that comes up in the next couple hours. WWE announces a WrestleMania press release and box office scores. And this is actually something for them to rant about. WWE, I quoted it, WWE on a roll. For the second consecutive year, it was the highest grossing and most attended entertainment event in the host venue of Atlanta, Georgia. The event, WrestleMania 27, the event itself grossed $6.6 million with 71,617 in attendance. Fans from all 50 states and 30 countries attended the event, along with it being broadcasted on 100 different, I believe they said 100 different networks and 20 different languages. I think you guys won't forgive me. It's kind of, well, I think you guys will forgive me. It's kind of late, and I've been known to put up long videos, but early rise tomorrow for the 9 to 5. As we all know too well, if this paid the bills, I would do it every day again. That's what happens when you get a week's vacation and why you got the 2 to 3 hour videos when there's really nothing else to do but catch up on the sleep that you haven't gotten in 3 years. Leaves you with a lot of time on your hands. And finally, since we discussed the fan bite, which led to the correction and all that whatnot, my quick thoughts on WrestleMania 27 will be the segment for this show, and I believe we'll end up wrapping up before the half-hour mark. We're right at 19 minutes, so it shouldn't be hard. I attended the event not attended. I watched the event with a couple friends, like we reported in a couple videos. Pay-per-views in general were expensive, so the go-to now is to get a bunch of your wrestling friends and go in on it, and it makes it cheaper. There was like 4 or 5 of us, and we just made it $15 a piece, and thus it's affordable. What baffled me until I found out there was a 4th hour And it could also hurt you at the same time. I mean, this goes back to me saying do what TNA is doing and cut back. Go to your core pay-per-views, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. Stop televising King of the Ring and make it a pay-per-view. Make these pay-per-views mean something, and then maybe the cost wouldn't be so much because pay-per-views wouldn't be every other week like TNA is known to do. And maybe a price break. But it kind of shocked me when my brother-in-law, who watched the event with me, invited me to the event at his house. WrestleMania, which I can only assume was because of the event and the fact that it's 4 hours instead of three, retailed at 59.95. So, like we've done in our first our first couple videos, you just got to do the math. And this is where you're going to stick with your bi-weekly pay-per-views or your over excessive pay-per-views, if you want to, use that adjective. Some kind of price break. Figure out who's ordering them and who's not. For those who's not, it's safe to say it could be anybody. It could be an avid wrestling fan who just catches up on Monday night. Another argument I made that everything should happen at the pay-per-view that you're paying for. You should get the fallout, but before you get the fallout, it shouldn't be recaps of what you missed at Mania and an advertisement that you can order it again the night after. Give some kind of price break. That way, I had a friend who, this was years ago, so I guess, and he was a co-host on a couple of the starter shows, that ordered every pay-per-view. And now he doesn't because obviously costs, economics, times are tough for everybody. In particular, times are tough for this friend, so he basically is forced to YouTube, basically wait and get segments that he'll build into full episodes of wrestling programs and pay-per-views because the cost is just astronomical. Because, and we'll go back to it one more time before we close with our plugs. When you're, outside of WrestleMania, when you're charging $49.95, well, let's go to WrestleMania one more second. $59.95 for the fourth hour. You factor in, even though it says right next to it, plus taxes and fees. Fees go to the providers who carry it. Fees go to WWE for broadcasting it. Taxes from the cable provider and taxes that the promotion has to pay to get the pay-per-view time. This pay-per-view last night, I want to say when you get your cable bill, we usually said the $49.95 ones were between $65 and $80. I want to say between 80 and 90, borderline 100. And that's what I always, at least I do. I mean, me and the brother-in-law last year rented SummerSlam, and it came to like $70 with the taxes, but it wasn't bad. But when you jack up the face value of the pay-per-view, and then you haven't even factored in what the cable company's going to charge, the fees that are going to be charged on behalf of WWE, you're looking, like I said, at between an $80 and $100 pay-per-view. And it comes back to what I just said. Keep to your core pay-per-views. You wouldn't get bored. Money in the Bank, kind of, you hit gold on that. Money in the Bank could be its own pay-per-view because it's the opportunity for either a no-name or someone who is up and coming and finally gets their shot. It's an interesting pay-per-view. Some naysayers and some critics liked it when it was part of the WrestleMania pay-per-view, but I've argued in other videos that yeah, it's another pay-per-view and we're sick of seeing multiple pay-per-views in almost a bi-weekly basis, but this one would be worth it. Money in the Bank, if you focus that whole pay-per-view, not just the fact that it'll be one shot for the Raw brand and one shot for SmackDown. If you took that whole focus of Money in the Bank, where each match there's something to gain that will expand the wrestler's career, then why not give it its own pay-per-view? If you hype it well enough, it should work out. It should sell itself, as long as, like I said, make it so instead of just a red and blue briefcase, so each side has the opportunity, a representative from each side has a title shot. Make it so every match, whether it be a title or not, and that, just to point out, that would mean you could actually, by default, make your titles mean something again. If, say, you had the Money in the Bank for a world title shot or a WWE title shot, and then those are your main events, the last two matches, and then basically put everything on the line. Be creative. You can come up with anything. But then it's actually, there's risk and reward, as in life, as in anything. Make it something to where your wrestling fans, the people, that buy it, the parents that buy it, the people that attend the events, make it so it's every match is something different. The result is somebody loses, but somebody advances in their career. And dare say, you could start with this youth movement. Um, I'll have a full recap on WrestleMania. I just wanted to get this out of the way. But just to sum it up, I liked the Cole and Lawler match. I did. Everybody wanted to see that. But overall, I mean, Undertaker kept his streak. Uh, and again, this is just off topic, but it's just a rumor that Undertaker is looking for WrestleMania 20 to be his last. But like we discussed last video, a lot of you in the wrestling community and the wrestling reporting community don't want to see it be a newcomer. You want to see it be somebody who's grandfathered in, who, even before they step in the ring, when they're spending their couple of weeks cutting the promos, looks like they might have a chance of actually ending the streak. And as we discussed before, any way you look at it, I mean, if you look at Undertaker's contract right now, Undertaker knows he needs to take care of himself because his highlight is a couple of months before Mania And then his showcase is he comes back for Mania for the streak because it means so much and means so much to his character. Just tidbits on different things. I mean, nobody's gonna like when it actually comes to an end, but it's gonna come to an end eventually. They've been saying. I remember hearing when I was still in junior year of high school, people were saying every year that this was going to be Undertaker's year, where he called it quits, and it hasn't happened yet. So we could be totally wrong, but ending on 19 wouldn't have as much of an effect as ending on 20. Taker has made his money, and he can call it a life, knowing that he had a streak. He had something no other wrestler had, title or not. The streak overpowered everything. I mean, even my sister, who isn't a wrestling fan in any sense, said that she wanted to see The Undertaker versus Triple H. And I only argue with that match because the streak is fine, but Triple H spent 3 weeks first burying Sheamus, who who's the King of the Ring winner. That carries its own prestige. And then he more or less buried the locker room. And then he went on to say that what I joked about the video before last, or somewhere within this month of WrestleMania talk, that nothing else mattered, not even titles. All that mattered was the streak. So thank you, Triple H. The titles are already laughed at to where wrestlers don't even want them because the prestige isn't even in there anymore. Anybody remember the 24-month, I know we're going ECW days, 24-month title holder RVD? It meant something. I mean, the brand and the wrestling style were in demand, but to boot, he wasn't your fly-by-night title holder. He put on matches that when he won, you could believe he was a champion, he deserved it, and he retained for 24 months or more. I mean, I didn't watch it all the time, but I watched enough back in the Paul Heyman days of it to know that that was important. And at that time, it was still relatively and or phasing itself out on WWE's side because they thought entertainment, guest hosts, spontaneous things, unpredictability were the key. And like I said last video, just give the wrestling fans what they want. Wrestling with two wrestlers who have a common feud over something that makes sense. They go back and forth. They cut their promo. They come to blows a couple of times. But it comes to you build the story so well, like I said in the beginning, that come that pay-per-view, you want to buy it. And it's just not there anymore. Now, if it changes after WrestleMania and they start with a new format now that Mania is out of the way, we'll see what happens. But time will tell. Until tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, when we give you your Raw ratings, Raw recaps, and more on WrestleMania and wrestling's news, feel free to visit the show's site, WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Interact with our online forum, ask a question, post a topic, respond to a topic. Visit youtube.com to view this video and any other video. This video should be uploaded and posted by tomorrow morning. There's some download time that kind of delays when it's actually posted. But until next time, friend us on both Facebook and Twitter at CWE Company. Send show-related emails to cwecompany@gmail.com. Remember, when you're watching the video, at the very bottom to click the like button. And directly as you're watching the video, if you don't want to send in an email or visit the forums, you can comment directly under each video. Also on the show site, there's plenty of other things to do. You can figure out what we're all about, become a part of the team, as we are still looking for people to help and broaden the production of the show. Basically, the idea is to get me and a group of other people to cover everything. That way we can all do a column or a video excerpt, and all of your wrestling gets covered, brought to you by your friends at WrestleTalkShow.com. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed WrestleMania. It had some hits and misses that we'll get into tomorrow, but thank you very much, guys, and have a great evening.